Oh wow, there's everybody. Hey folks. Jeez, 10 o'clock class is you guys are fast. Go. Whiskey. Bean. Some. Huh, that's unfortunate. Cool. Ah, okay, that'll do it. Damn it. Oh, I'll have to do. Gotcha. Well, unless we get an email that says otherwise, we'll all be together next Tuesday at the Continuum. Just a second. Oh, hey, the mic automatically picked up. Oh, wait, no, it said properties.
Aha. Testing. There we go. So yeah, as of right now, um, unless things change, we should all be meeting up next Tuesday at our usual time at the Continuum. Um, the No worries. But yeah, so hopefully you all know where the Continuum is because my uh my ability with like navigation's awful. So most of you I assume are gonna be like taken by bus there. So it should be okay getting to the building. As far as the room, last I've been told we're gonna be in the lecture hall, which will be at the far end of the building on the right, I think, after you go in. It's this big open room. It's it's a larger room, so we can spread out, as opposed to one of the smaller rooms, which is still well. No, this room is going to be pretty packed. What do we got? Huh? Let me check that. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Da-da-da-da. Just a second. Answering an email, and I will be right with you. Aha. 5 minutes late. Don't worry about it. You're good. Message retracted. Touche. Oh, Jesus. Hmm. I didn't know you could do that. Oh, that hurt. Oh no, my keys are coming loose. Keys, stop. Hopefully, um, yeah, no, that's fair. Um, I've got, I've got some friends, and yeah, no, they're harsh. Okay. All right. That's cool. Let me see if I can do Fire Team Whiskey here. Excuse me.
Last team on the listing.
There we go.
The lowest of the low. They'll fight for booze and chili. Oh, rizzes and blow. Don't mind the distant screaming. That happens all the time. It's victory's sweet odor, which smells just like war crimes. All hail Fire Team Whiskey. All hail Fire Team Whiskey. All hail Fire Team Whiskey.
Special Forces Fire Team Whiskey. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get my headset off before I hurt myself. Already got a slight headache.
Okay. Mike. Yes, okay. And once we're in class, I can play stupid music whenever I want. Okay. So, unless we have any questions, oh, what's this? I was using your microphone. Okay. Yeah, no, OBS. 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 Unless we have any questions on anything, I guess we can, do class. Okay. I told my other class that I'm usually more high energy. There we go. When I'm actually able to be up and like walking around and flailing like I usually do, as opposed to sitting on my couch and in my pajama pants with a blanket and my fan on and my wherever the hell my cat went. So yeah, and like barefoot too. I mean, I'm just super lazy. All right, so It looks like everybody is here, I believe. So we're good to go. All right. This was where we left off last. We had the Netherlands, and I mentioned the whole the whole thing with William of Orange. Yeah, I was calculating last night quite how far I needed to get in the notes to make it for today. It's like, how did we only make it 7 slides? It's like, oh yeah, we did William of Orange on Tuesday. But yeah, so the Netherlands had the Protestant Reformation, and not only did they push off Spain, but they held on to all that trading. Well, I shouldn't even say that. The Dutch have had a the Dutch have been really top of the line in technology in Europe for a very long time. I mean, basically, since the Italians have been kind of usurped after the Renaissance, because I mean, you know, the Venetians were on top for hundreds of years, but basically immediately after that, it was just the Dutch all the time, and they've been on top of things. So, as we said here, they established a trading center in the Hudson River. That basically had New York or New Amsterdam. They purchased Manhattan Island. And while they created their colony with religious tolerance in mind, they were not so tolerant of the natives and fought for 2 decades against the Algonquins. And while they were victorious, there was a sharp turn in public opinion against the colonization. So by the time the English sent a fleet to get rid of them, they just were like, "Yeah, we're out. Don't worry about it." So thus ended the Dutch in North America, really. I mean, the Dutch still had imperial aspirations around the rest of the world. If you take my 104 class, the numbers are different from my other school. But my Western Civilization Part 2, we talk more about imperialism globally, and the Dutch are very much involved. So they're not done. In fact, I was having a discussion with a Dutch friend, and they're like, "Yeah, we have a lot to answer for." So, the old Fort Orange. And this was actually part of the design, having these palisades that were built out like this, where they, you know, come out and make these diamond shapes, because they can be defended on all sides much more efficiently than, you know, say a circle or say a square. There's overlapping lines of fire. It's more efficient. So again, you have it here. Because see, you've got the cannons here, and this one on the end can fire either over there or over here as needed. There again, fighting the Algonquins. And handing over New Amsterdam to the British because, well, might as well. Alright, now on to the English. There's quite a lot to talk about with the English. We'll get through most of it today. And we can only get so far today because, well, I've only got so far in the notes, to be perfectly honest. But hopefully I'll be able to really tear into it this weekend. What? And finish up this chapter and then get us into, literally just a couple more pages in this chapter. And then get us into chapter 3 on Tuesday. What do you want? Alright. So, again, I lost my design that I used. Hold on. That's what I gotta deal with. I don't know if you can hear him purring, but he purrs like a motorcycle. All day and all night, this cat. Anyway, Jamestown. Yes, they like my throw blanket, which is half the reason I keep it on me. If I had my black cat, she'd be sitting in my lap because that's what she always does. Thankfully, my big cat knows he's too big to sit in my lap. Otherwise, my legs would not work. So, different from what we saw with the Spanish and French, the English used a different sort of colonization method, or economic method rather, of the joint stock company. Investors would buy shares, and they would then use royal backing to make up the rest of the money, so that if, say, a storm were to destroy the ship, they wouldn't lose all of their money. Because the way it used to be was if you invested in, say, an expedition and it failed, the ship wrecked or something happened, they'd come for you, and you'd have to pay for everything. And if that meant they'd have to take all your property and throw you in debtor's prison, well, sucks for you. But this meant that you would pay for a portion of the expedition, and then whatever, and then if it failed, then you lost whatever you paid in. That was gone. But if it succeeded, the quality has dropped. Hold on. 240, good God. Can it? Okay, I can actually push it back up. Do you have to bite me? Can you not? Can you not? Okay. Anyway. So if you bought, say, I don't know, 5% of the shares, and the venture made, I don't know, £1,000,000 sterling, you would get 5% of that back because you bought 5% of the shares. So hey, you've now made a profit, assuming you didn't spend a ton buying the shares. So it was a relatively safe venture, and if it succeeded, you'd be able to make money back. And it also used royal backing, so the government was involved, but it was also still, private investors. It was a joint stock. It used both the government and private investors to work. So they founded the Virginia Company in 1606. This was named after Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, because she never married. Again, Virgin Queen. Now, Virginia was not, don't think of Virginia as the state. Virginia was everything from what is now present-day New York, because remember, the Dutch had it at that time, down to what is now present-day North Carolina. All of that. If you land anywhere between North Carolina and New York, that's Virginia. Now, the charter for this promised that the settlers would propagate the Christian religion, but that was secondary. The big thing was, well, let's make money. So, by April 1607, they founded Jamestown at the mouth of the Chesapeake River. It was chosen because it was easy to defend, but that was about it. The area was swampy, infested with mosquitoes. I was actually going to say, if you're familiar with, it's like, wait, we're in South Carolina. We're in the low country. We know about mosquitoes here. When I was teaching in Anderson, well, not in Anderson, in Pendleton, being up in the Piedmont region of South Carolina, the mosquitoes aren't nearly as bad. I mean, they're still awful, but compared to this area of South Carolina, down here in the swampy region, they're not nearly as bad. Because for one, there tends to be an almost constant breeze coming off the mountains, so that helps. But they were, in particular, here in Jamestown, in a swampy region, so mosquitoes. The nearby water was tainted with salt, so they couldn't even use the nearby water to drink from. It was a really bad place to be. I mean, like colonial Jamestown, where you can go and walk around and like look at stuff, isn't even on the site of old Jamestown. You have to go a good ways to actually go to actual historic, like archaeological site Jamestown, because it's just this crappy, muddy little spit of land out on the water. Um, yeah, it's garbage. And also, most of the settlers were not at all ready for this. I feel like most of us learned this in high school. Okay. They figured they'd be visiting a place like Cortez or Pizarro. Um, Lots of gold and silver, so they spent most of their time looking for precious metals rather than, growing crops or hunting or not dying. Um, and it was due to the local chief, Powhatan. Yeah, that sounds right. And his Powhatan Confederacy of 14,000 Algonquin-speaking natives that they survived the first winter at all. So, once again, which we're going to see this a lot, friendly natives keeping these idiot Europeans from just walking in and dying. And idiot Europeans not being very thoughtful about it. So they brought in more colonists using a 7-year indentured servitude plan, which is where, excuse me, which is where if you can't pay for passage over, you enter into this agreement where I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. Basically, you owe service to someone who paid for your trip over and some other price, for 7 years, as usually a laborer, usually as field work. You're doing farming for 7 years. Then after those 7 years, you'd be given a plot of land and some amount of money to start your own life in North America. So it's like, okay, so you can't afford passage now. So if you're willing to go and work there for free for 7 years, after the 7 years, we'll give you land and money. Then you can start. And indentured servitude was a big thing because a lot of people were trying to get out of England and Ireland at this time. However, that nearly failed because there was a severe dry spell, so the Powhatan Confederacy actually wasn't really able to help I almost said the idiots, the English themselves. So the settlers were actually like getting in boats ready to leave during in the spring, and there was only a third resupply convoy arriving that kept them from completely abandoning Jamestown. So Jamestown was almost not our first permanent colony. It was just about abandoned entirely. So even though throughout all of this, the English settlers were surviving thanks to the help from the natives, it was still strained. Chief Powhatan was trying to take advantage of the English as best he could. Like he figured, well, they're in bad shape, so let's see if I can make them dependent on me, and like, because he understood that they had technology that was greater than what the natives had. So if he could make them depend on him, then he could get his hands on that technology. Like, he understood guns, but he also understood that they couldn't create guns. Of course, at the same time, the English were like, okay, well, once we're in a decent position, we're, gonna make these people subservient to us because we're English and that's just how we roll. So here's the English setting up, the natives being very helpful in keeping them from, starving to death. Here is Jamestown. Now, as you can see, there's been a bit of erosion. Some of the fort was in an area that's now underwater. And parts of the fort are newer. And then they recently excavated some of it. When did I go there? I mean, I've been to Old Jamestown. I went there with my aunt for some reason. Why was I in Jamestown? I don't know. I've been there. It was alright. I mean, I've said I'm not. I mean, I shouldn't say this teaching American history, but I'm not huge in American history. Compared to, I mean, literally, like, my last year of college, I was in Ireland and on a campus where I could walk to the other side of campus, and there were the ruins of a castle that was from the 1200s. Like, okay, what we do? There's this fort that you can't even see anymore. That's from, the 1600s. Okay, there's this ruins of this stone castle that you can go inside of from 400 years before that. That's just there. Anyway, so obviously there's Jamestown, Newport News. I didn't realize that was that old. And here's a lot of the native villages, and this was showing you just how big the Powhatan Confederacy was. I mean, it was just this entire region of, again, what is now Virginia, and I guess this would be Maryland? Now, the thing about the British colonies is they needed an economic output. And unlike with the Spanish, they didn't just find gold everywhere. They needed something to grow, usually. So rather than just wiping out the natives and taking their crap, it was tobacco, or Orinoco tobacco, I guess is how it's pronounced, which was grown in the West Indies and South America, was becoming popular in England and Europe as a whole. So it was, becoming high in demand. So John Rolfe figured, hey, let's see if this can grow in Virginia. And within 2 years, it was clear, hey, this grows well in Virginia. And I don't know if it's the same strain of tobacco that we grow today, but it's probably pretty close. Here in South Carolina, if you go anywhere rural and you're, going down some side road through the fields, you're going to see tobacco fields, and there's a fair chance it's going to be this. So of course, the better it's doing, the more they're going to need investment. In Jamestown, 1650, 2,000 pounds of tobacco was exported, so it's about a ton of tobacco was sent out of Jamestown within a year of them realizing, hey, this stuff's good to sell, or good to grow in Jamestown. 1620, 40,000 pounds. By 1629, 1.5 million pounds was being exported out of North America. Now, we're stopping at 1629 because of 1630, economics happens and it drops and blah, blah, blah. But 1629 is a decent cutoff point, and we'll discuss other stuff after that. But of course, the only place to grow tobacco is land, and the land typically belonged to the natives. Who dares? Yes, I'm teaching, Mother. My mom texts me, hey, are you okay? Yes, I'm teaching. Why are you bothering me? So 1614, oh my god. Alright, hold on. This is very unprofessional, but let my mother know that I'm teaching, so she'll leave me alone. Okay. Teaching. Sorry. Okay. So, 1614, Powhatan tried to create an alliance between his Confederates and the English, married his daughter Pocahontas to John Rolfe. Again, a thing that, I don't know, Disney was weird about. Now, Powhatan did capture and then later release John Smith because he figured, hey, let's maybe try and get along. I don't know, there's a whole lot of weird stuff going on that Disney makes weirder. So she converted to Christianity, took the name Rebecca. there was a weird thing. Um, apparently, like it's something I remember. A friend of mine he was quoting, might have been um, Monty Python. In Monty Python's old stuff. I think it was like Hans. Like Hans. It's like, oh yes, a good Christian name. And the joke being that there are certain names that are Christian, which is to say European, and if you convert to Christianity, you have to take a Christian name. And I don't know, that's just something I've not thought about in years. And when I was reading about this, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing that I've not had to think about in a very long time. So, by the way, that's the thing. Like, at least it used to be. I don't know how common that is anymore. But like, a Christian name is a thing. Traveled with John Rolfe and their infant son to England 2 years later, but then fell ill and died within a year because Native Americans don't have immune systems for England. Because England, well, no, this is 1600s. Never mind. I was gonna say is the air is bad, but like I don't know, not the best. So John Ross soon returned to Virginia to work on his tobacco cultivation, and around the same time, Powhatan died and left his brother. See, I can say Powhatan, but Open Shanako? Shanako? Yeah, as chief. So John Ross back, and Powhatan's not chief anymore because he's dead. What could possibly go wrong? So here's tobacco cultivation. You got the big old leaves. Everybody kind of pitches in to harvest. You're gonna get a contact high picking them like that, though, because the leaves are very juicy. You have to lay them out to dry. Like the barn in the back there, that's a tobacco drying barn. We actually have, well, I'd say two. One's pretty much fallen apart. We've got a barn. We've got a farm out in Timmonsville, and there's this big tobacco drying barn, and you can tell because the roof's really high and steep, and it doesn't come to a point. It actually is open. It's a slat about yay wide, so that the air can flow through. There's gaps along the floor about this high, and then a gap on the roof about this wide, so that the air can flow in and up to help dry the tobacco out, because it's got to be dry before you can roll it, obviously. And it also ships a lot easier when it's dry, because if you ship it wet, it's gonna mold and be gross. And you hang it up in the tobacco barn to dry. It's a whole process. Okay, yeah, so that's different than what we have today. That's some very little, very small leaf tobacco. This is um, this is the historic Jamestown, like where you can go and walk around and see how things used to be. So yeah, this is closer to how it looks today, even though it's a painting of how things used to be. Because again, you if you drive down the road and see tobacco fields, I mean, the leaves are like this big. It looks like cabbage or something. Just not whatever. I'm losing my analogy. Yeah, these are very small. Now here they have them drying outside. Now, granted, I didn't get a very high quality image of this, but whatever. Um, I guess maybe they didn't. This was before they quite had barns built for it. And here is Pocahontas and John Rolfe being married. And I mean, I know it was like a political marriage of convenience, but it's a fairly nice looking, you know, image. Everybody looks like they're having a good time, except for this child who looks like an adult in the face. Sometimes these paintings weird me out like that. Little freaking like, you know, Mozart over here. I will never not make fun of children in old paintings. Ah, yes, and there's Open Shanako. He's uh he's less chill about everything. So, 1619. Virginia had the right to establish their own local governing body, the House of Burgesses. Yeah, why not? More colonists were pouring in. Many were too poor to pay their way. Um, here again, the indentured servants. I believe I repeat myself a few times here, but it's because the book um, mentions like indentured servants, but then doesn't talk about them, and then later mentions indentured servants again, but then talks about them, and I'm not sure if the book's going to do that for me, so I'll go ahead and tell you what they are, so whatever. So as I said, came as indentured servants, worked for several years to pay off the debt. Also in 1619 was when the first boatload of 20 Africans arrived in Jamestown. This was aboard a Dutch ship. Now this was, as I said, my Dutch friend was like, "Yeah, we have a lot to talk about." Now, it's weird that you have biology in the same time slot as this class, but I mean, I'd rather you be here late than not at all. Now, I want to clarify something here though. Is the Africans that were brought to Jamestown in 1619 were not slaves, they were indentured servants. Now, the line between indentured servants and slaves was a little bit hazy, but mom texted me again. Okay, thanks, mom. But at the least, there was this understanding that after a certain number of years of labor, they would be free, have their own land, etc., etc. So 1619 was when the first Africans were brought to America as bound labor, but with the understanding that they would eventually be free, even though they were brought against their will. It's a weird thing. It's not like they're like, hey, we want to get on this boat and go to this place we've never seen before. They were brought against their will, but not technically as slaves. So as we saw before, farmers needed land. Open Canico was not as chill as his brother. March 1622, he organized a surprise attack on the English and killed a third of the population. The English settlers, of course, retaliated and claimed victory by right of war. That is how they spelled it, W-A-R-R-E. English is weird. And by 1623 claimed victory, but hostilities continued for nearly a decade. Now, unlike the Dutch, the English are pretty okay with constantly fighting. So 1624, King James annulled their charter, made Virginia a royal colony. Privy Council passed laws, paid taxes directly to the Church of England, yada yada yada. Basically, the main thing was he saw that Virginia colony was making a lot of money and wanted a bigger cut of it. So it's like, hey, Virginia colony, you're now a royal colony. Isn't that nice? You now pay us money directly. Also, we're gonna use the whole you fighting the natives as an excuse. But that didn't stop another uprising 20 years later, in which 500 English colonists were killed. Though within 2 years, the chief was captured and killed. By this point, there were too many English settlers to wipe out, and the Chesapeake natives eventually had to submit to the English authority within 2 years and had to pay tribute to remain on the land they had lived on for generations, because, of course, that's how the English roll. Just ask India. But yeah. So here are the first 20 Africans brought to Jamestown. Again, technically indentured servants, although very much against their will. Oh wow, that one dude is just like still chopping wood. He's about to get knifed. So yeah, the rather one-sided attack here. Of course, we see lots of women and children. Oh no, it's so terrible. It's not like the English settlers murdered lots of native women and children. No, that would be that would be crazy. We never show that. Then here's Virginia as a royal colony. Of course, it's weird to see Virginia from the east, I guess? Yeah. Sorry. The Virginian Sea. What? So, even though they were constantly fighting the natives, Virginia was still growing. Excuse me. 40 to 50,000 new immigrants were coming from Europe to sell in Virginia and Maryland. We'll talk about Maryland in a minute. Well, I guess we'll talk about Maryland right now. So, Maryland was founded in 1632 by Charles Calvert, who was given the title of Lord Baltimore by King Charles I. Now, Maryland was named after the Virgin Queen, good God, the Virgin Mary, because Charles Calvert was Catholic. He was a minority Catholic Englishman and wanted to create a colony for the Catholics because they were, oppressed in England. So let's come to the New World and get away from England. Now, the initial colony did succeed. St. Mary's City was built on the mouth of the Potomac. It was headed by a Catholic aristocracy, but the majority of the population was Protestant laborers because, again, most of the English population was Protestant. I mean, I guess they could have brought over Irish, but that actually would have caused different issues. It's like, this is a Catholicism thing. It's like, yeah, but you're still English and we're Irish, so we hate you. So to avoid an uprising, the governor, who was Charles Calvert's brother, Leonard, because there's no such thing as nepotism, passed the Act of Religious Toleration, 1649, that allowed religious freedom for all Christians. Notice it's very specific, this religious freedom. So, cool. We've got Virginia, we've got Maryland. Maryland has avoided a Protestant uprising. But we still had the issue of tobacco because, you gotta farm tobacco. Most laborers report English and Irish laborers as indentured servants. And they're bringing in more African indentured servants because, well, they're constantly growing more tobacco, so you constantly need more people to work, and it's cheaper to bring in African indentured servants. And by 1660, there were fewer English settlers willing to cross the Atlantic. According to this, let's see. Improved economic conditions in England meant that fewer English were willing to cross the Atlantic. So, the Virginia House of Burgesses passed a law that allowed for African laborers to be enslaved, and Virginia followed in 1664. So, this is where it really started going downhill. Now, the African indentured servants had already been treated differently, to say the least. But now we're going ahead and putting it in the law that, well, since we're not able to keep the steady supply of the English and Irish laborers, well, I guess we'll just hold on to the African laborers for life. Now, this wasn't just something that came out of nowhere. This followed the example that was set in Barbados, which was had a sugar growing colony, and due to the harsh conditions there, had a high mortality rate that was literally so bad that they had to constantly import more slaves to keep the workforce going. Now, I'm gonna say this, and I'm probably gonna say this more than once, but not to reduce the inhumanity of slavery in North America, but in North America, in the United States, what will become the United States, the slaves here, at least, and again, this is a really low bar, at least survived long enough to repopulate. And I know, again, I know the language that I'm using, and it's bad, but I'm having to put this into terrible terms because of what we're talking about. And in fact, like, the population often grew because they weren't being killed well, not necessarily killed, but they weren't being worked to death like almost weekly. In Barbados, that was how they were being worked. The sugar plantations were terrible. I mean, just the sugarcane fields were extremely harsh. Harvesting the sugarcane could injure you severely. The grinding of the sugar, the grind wheels were dangerous. Boiling the sugar to create the various, my poor friend, to create the various byproducts was like molten. It was like molten lead. Like if it hit you, it would just stick to you and burn. Yeah, it was horrible. And like South America had a lot of this too. Brazil was probably the worst in terms of slave mortality. So yeah, and the slaves in Barbados were treated like chattel. They were property, no different than livestock. So, yeah, this was how things were in the Caribbean and in South America. So, in North America, it's like, well, I guess we'll just take this on board. So here we have more of some of the hostilities there. But this is Maryland. I believe that's Charles Calvert, Lord Baltimore himself. Yeah, this is definitely Catholic. You can see this up here. There's his brother, Leonard Calvert. Oops. This is historic St. Mary's City. See, I'm already forgetting crap. Yeah, St. Mary's City. Not a whole lot. I couldn't find much in terms of images. Sorry. Now, well, I have a lot to say about slaves and indentured servants. There's a whole thing about that, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, this is obviously much later because it's a photograph. So here's a group of African laborers. Now, yeah, Bacon's Rebellion. So, this is something that's really interesting. And, I mean, take it as you will, but despite the laws that were being passed to separate the African laborers from the European laborers, there was still class solidarity among indentured servants because they were all mistreated. Now, there is this myth of white slavery, and it's not a thing. It's like, oh yeah, indentured servitude existed, therefore white slavery was a thing, so why should we talk about black slavery? It's like, no, that's not a thing. Because indentured servitude, as I have said, existed a set period of time, then it was over, and then you weren't a slave anymore, or indentured servant anymore. Now, when you were an indentured servant, you were often horribly mistreated, beaten, abused. There were certain loopholes that could have years added to your contract. It was bad. It was unjust. It shouldn't have existed. But you shouldn't equate it to slavery that existed because of the color of your skin. I mean, come on. But when everybody was an indentured servant, regardless of skin color, there was this solidarity. So, those that had survived their time as servants and won their freedom often didn't have much and went west to start a new life, only to deal with hostile natives. So, while dealing with these hostile natives, they tried to get in contact with the governments back east, and the governments back east are like, hey, we only care about the tobacco, screw you guys. This was when Bacon's Rebellion began. 1675, the frontier settlers attacked nearby native villages that happened to be allied with the English. So the natives fought back. The governor of Virginia, Sir William Berkeley, who is bothering me. Good stuff. Yeah. I'm not going to mention that. So William Berkeley wouldn't intervene, so Bacon formed a militia of planters, frontiersmen, laborers, both black and white, to attack the natives regardless of tribal affiliation, as you do. Berkeley declared Bacon guilty of treason, so rather than just giving themselves up, they headed towards Jamestown with the help of their new wives, spread information and rumors about the mistreatment of workers. One controlled the House of Burgesses, marched across Virginia, burned plantations, including Berkeley's in September, and eventually burned down Jamestown as well. And Berkeley fled across Chesapeake Bay. So Bacon's rebellion won. And then Bacon died of dysentery, movement fell apart. Berkeley came back with British backup and wiped out the leaders of the rebellion. The plantation owners that worked with them had their plantations plundered. The big aspect, though, was that Berkeley saw the disenfranchised white laborers were willing to work with their black counterparts. So those that worked, the poor white laborers who were rebelling, he'd allow them to go home peacefully and make their lot in life a little bit better, while making things worse for the black rebels to ensure that the racial line was further divided. And then, in 1672, King Charles II chartered the Royal African Company to directly transport African slaves to North America, so they wouldn't have to use a Dutch intermediary. So here again we have the indentured servants working together. This is, again, tobacco. More indentured servants. Just more. I just have a bunch of these working together. There's Bacon burning down Jamestown. There they are again. Okay. We'll talk about the West Indies on Tuesday when we meet up in person. It'll be great. Any questions? I didn't mean to run quite as far as we did, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about Bacon's Rebellion. Yeah. Any questions before we finish up our last day of online, at least for the time being? We'll see how long we last in person before somebody has an outbreak and we go back home. I have no idea. Probably. Try and come in a little bit early on Tuesday. Whichever class you have to be there for, try and come in just a little bit early and drop by the office, and they should be able to hook you up. If not, they'll at least be able to let you in. I mean, if anybody here in the chat knows better than me, then, by all means, let us know. But I'm not sure. Gosh, I hope mine still works. I hope it's not a yearly thing. That would suck. Where is mine? I've had to use mine since, like, March. I hope it's in my backpack. What do you want, Otto? I want to put a harness on you and bring you to class one day. Yeah. Would you like that? You wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Alright, oh, I closed my book. Alright, well, on that note, I will see, don't lick me. I will see you folks on Tuesday, 10 o'clock, in the lecture hall, in the continuum. Now, again, I think I know where it is, but as I said, I'm not actually ever taught in there, so we'll all figure it out together. Now, for your guys' class, I'll already be in there, because I'll be in there from my 8:30 class. But if the door isn't one of those that automatically closes, I'll have it open. Or if there's a way I can prop it open, I'll prop it open after class. So yeah, I'll do my best to like funnel you guys in. Anyway, yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Bye, says Otto. See you guys on Tuesday. Not you though, Otto. You gotta stay here. Big doofus. Alright, take care, y'all. Where's my mouse? There it is. Okay. I gotta find where my stuff is. Okay, take care, y'all. Have a good weekend. Be safe. All that good stuff. Remember, wear your masks.